Member of the Executive Council MEC for Economic Development in South Africa's Gauteng province, Lebogang Maile, highlighted the immense potential AfCFTA holds for boosting intra-African trade. But also, however, he also raised concerns over what he described as a lack of commitment by some African leaders in driving the engagement forward. Now, MEC Maile joins us now to unpack Gauteng's role in positioning South Africa as a strategic gateway for AfCFTA implementation across the continent. Mr. Maile, good evening and welcome to Channel Africa.
Evening, and thanks for having us.
Yeah, so MEC, you have raised concerns about the lack of commitment from African leaders towards AfCFTA. But what do you believe is holding back the political will? And in your view, how can it be reignited? Because we need it to work.
Well, I think it's not so much about what the various leaders say, but what they do, as they say that action speaks louder than words, and hence my skepticism and concern about the commitment. And I think that we need to strengthen institutions, civil society institutions in different sectors of society, whether it's political, cultural, sports, religious sectors, business, and strengthen government institutions, because the success of any program that we want to pursue as a continent should not be left to individual leaders. If we have strong institutions that have clarity of thought and that are organized and properly coordinated throughout the continent, I think we will be able to see a difference. And I think in the last few years, we have seen weakening of various institutions, especially in society. Hence, you have the current status quo, and we are not seeing much progress because in the different countries, people have been depending on individual leaders, because Africa does not need a messiah to solve her problems. Africa needs all her people to take charge and take responsibility. I believe in collective leadership. I believe in strong institutions. And if we can be able to start there, and that's why we need to also work hard to raise the consciousness of the different societies so that they can be able to have an appreciation and understanding of the challenges that they face in the various communities and societies. And that way, they will be able to develop a shared perspective and then be united in action to tackle the challenges, especially of poverty, of inequality, and of unemployment.
Yeah, MEC, Gauteng is often seen as South Africa's economic engine, and I'd like you to, give me practical steps that your province is taking to align its economic development plans with, AfCFTA's objectives.
Well, I think, as I've said, the first thing is to have clarity of thought, be clear on what is it that needs to happen, which we have spent a bit of time doing that in consultation with different stakeholders, with different spheres of government in our society, but also we are connecting more with other African countries, especially regions or provinces, so that we can be able to start with that coordinated efforts of exchanging ideas and of also trading amongst ourselves as Africans. But we need to start by doing the things that are within our control, like infrastructure in our own province. And that's why we are investing a lot of resources towards building infrastructure, making sure that there is a reliable energy, a reliable water supply, roads to be able to move goods and people, fight crime, and all those things are in our budgets. We are not just having plans, but we are financing those programs that we are expected to execute and we are expected to achieve.
Yeah, and I'm glad, MEC, that you're speaking about the infrastructure deficit that remains a key bottlenecks across the African continent. But I'm keen to know whether or not you're collaborating with other provinces and neighboring countries to improve the trade corridors and logistics. I mean, for when we talk about this continental free trade area, we would want our neighbors to also have good roads and good, rail system. Are you collaborating in any way?
Yes, we are. We have no choice. And that's why in the crafting of our economic development plan, we have firstly consulted with the neighboring provinces, because if we are not coordinated in the country and we don't collaborate and we don't reinforce each other's strengths and complement each other in dealing with the weaknesses that we might all have, we will not be able to succeed. One practical example, for instance, we're in the process of building a speed train between Gauteng and Limpopo, which will end up in Musina ultimately, which is close to the border of Zimbabwe. And that on its own will build logistics capacity. It will be able to create economic activities. And ultimately, we should be able to take that train into Zimbabwe. We should look at taking it to Mozambique and other neighboring countries. But you have to start somewhere.
But MEC, sorry to cut in, do we have a timeline of when the train, or it's an idea that is on the table?
Well, it's an idea that's on the table and that is funded. As I've said, that we are not just talking ideas. We've set money aside in this financial year to do a feasibility study. Limpopo province has set money aside to do the same. And once a feasibility study is done, we will then be able to package the project and engage the private sector and understand how much is needed, because you have to start somewhere. And if you don't plan properly, you will not be able to understand the magnitude of the task. One of the weaknesses we've seen with many projects in Africa failing, there's not been proper planning, there's not been proper mobilization of resources like skills and money. So that's what we are doing, learning from our previous mistakes. I mean, in Gauteng already, in the last 15 years, we've been able to execute a successful speed train called Gauteng, which will also be expanding to other parts of our province. It has been a success story. It has been one of the good examples of a triple P. So we're not talking something that has never been done, something that has never been implemented. Learning on that, we will be able to impart the knowledge and the skills that we have acquired over the last 15 years. It's a facility that is owned by the provincial government. We invested about 26 billion rands of our money. The facility, it's now, or rather the asset, worth about 45 billion and growing. We are hosting the province of Western Cape on the 4th of August. They want to learn from us on how we have done this, and we will be learning from them as well on how they are doing other things well. And that way, as I've said, we should be able to complement each other as provinces here in South Africa, and ultimately get the national government to provide the leadership and the resources. We are working with Northwest, for instance, to revitalize an area in Tshwane called Babelegi Industrial Park, which it's a huge industrial area with enormous capacity. We are working with Mpumalanga, we are working with Free State. So I can go on and on about the collaborations that are that are there, that are alive, and which are taking place. And we want to consult. Next week Friday, for instance, I'm meeting the Dean of Ambassadors in Africa, because we want to start having discussions with other African regions in the continent. We have a investment conference that we host every year. The inaugural one this year was successful, and we were able to raise about 312 billion in pledges. And next year we want to extend an invitation to regional governments, to entities that are responsible for trade and investment, to organize the business. Like any other program, there has to be a champion, and we have imposed that responsibility on ourselves, working with other stakeholders in making sure that we succeed. And we are confident that with focus, with dedication, with allocation of resources, we should be able to achieve the objectives that we set ourselves.
Yeah, MEC, lastly, and I'm happy that you're collaborating with the Western Cape government, provincial government, to learn from each other. But also, are you collaborating with the private sector to promote investment in sectors that could thrive under the more integrated African markets? And if you are, what has been the reception from the private sector?
Well, as I've said already, they've pledged 312 billion into the Gauteng economy. And we are glad that institutions like the Development Bank of South Africa is based here, and they are already on their own investing in various projects in the continent. The PIC, which commands enormous resources and assets, is also investing not just in the economy of the country, but in the continent. We want to forge closer links with the African Development Bank, and that's why one of the things we want to pursue is to host the African Investment Conference that is funded and hosted by the African Development Bank. But we are also profiling successful entrepreneurs in the continent, like Dangote, Patrice Motsepe, and many others, so that we've got a structured discussion with them, looking at opportunities that exist in our province, in the country, and in other parts of the continent, and look at how do we unlock the challenges that they are facing, because there's a lot of resources even in the banks, the private sector, but unfortunately they are not able to invest because there are a lot of barriers to entry. And we also want them to nurture and mentor and incubate small businesses, small entrepreneurs, because we want to be deliberate in entrenching a culture of entrepreneurship, especially amongst young people. We're looking at just this morning, we had a session with the rector of the United Nations, Professor Marwala, to look at innovation and artificial intelligence and what are some of the practical things that can be done. Unfortunately, there's a lot of work that has been done previously, which we have to build on instead of just reinventing the wheel and starting new initiatives. We want to consolidate the work that has happened. We have the Innovation Hub, which we have created a long time ago in the province of Gauteng, and we want to ensure that we strengthen ties and relations between our Innovation Hub and the various tertiary institutions. And as you know, Gauteng has got the highest concentration of tertiary institutions, of research institutions. We've got a concentration of at least 12,000 millionaires just in the city of Johannesburg. So if we're able to coordinate better, meet their demands and their expectations, we think there's a lot of progress that can be made. So our plans have been well researched. We have worked with institutions, higher institutions, institutions of higher learning, with research institutions, and you've got institutions like Oxfam that are doing a lot of work in the continent on areas related to the economy, what has to be done, how do we reindustrialize, what are the barriers to entry for small entrepreneurs, the trends on poverty, trends on inequality, and we think with the data at our disposal, we should be able to make the right decisions because data is there, and we must be able to align that with the policy development and the legislation development. And that's why one of the things we have deliberately said we ought to do as Gauteng is to start sponsoring discussions in the national legislature through the National Council of Provinces, which is a platform that has been created for provinces to be able to raise issues that affect citizens.
Yeah, MEC, lastly, and I must say that we commend the work that you're doing. We can hope that the obstacles will be resolved. But lastly, what message do you have then for entrepreneurs on the ground?
Well, they have to stay focused. They have to be clear on what is it that they want to do, and they must not just depend on government. They must organize themselves. As I've said, that a strengthening of institutions is important. These SMMEs must also build sustainable organizations, and they must be able to take up the opportunities that are created by our democracy. And we have to make sure that we create a conducive environment and we open up markets. That's why the coordination of the different countries and the different sub-national governments and municipalities becomes important, because that's when we will be able to put our fingers on the pulse and we'll be able to know what is happening, so that there's no disjuncture between what government thinks and what has to be done with what entrepreneurs are planning.
MEC, let me thank you for staying up and for allowing us to do this interview, and may you continue to serve our province. All right, there you have it. That was the Executive Council MEC for Economic Development in South Africa's province, Lebogang Maile, there, unpacking Gauteng's role in positioning South Africa as a strategic gateway for the African Continental Free Trade Area implementation across the continent. And that conversation brings us to exactly 21:33 Central African Time. This is Africa World Hour on Channel Africa, the African Perspective.